Welcome to the Vida Stories podcast. Your family faith story is worth creating and passing down to the next generation. Tune in to the Vida Stories podcast as we cover topics on developing a generational faith, creating adventurous memories, and a legacy worth fighting for. I'm your host, Elizabeth Escobar. Now let's dive in. On today's episode, we have an incredible guest, Margo Lepe. Margo is a lifelong writer, journalist, storyteller whose passion is helping others find healing and freedom through faith. She is a devoted wife and mother, and we cannot wait to hear about her upcoming book. So, welcome, Margo. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled for this opportunity to speak on my first book in the palm of his hand. And I'm very excited and honored that you would have me on to speak about this book.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yes. So you have mentioned to me several times that that is who you are. That's kind of like the fabric of you. So tell us a little bit about that. How did this love for writing begin? What sparked it?
I can't pinpoint an exact moment that sparked anything, but I can remember writing for as long as, my earliest childhood memories consist of me carrying a journal of some sort and constantly writing my feelings down, creating poems, writing lyrics down. I'm sure as a, 80s and 90s child that might resonate with some women my age, but I feel that writing was always a part of who I was, and I was good at it. I felt confident in things that I wrote. I would see how others would respond to the words that I would pour out of my heart, really. And that continued to create that love and that desire to share that, I think, on a bigger scale, just because it's almost like a gift that you appreciate so much, but you're going to enjoy it so much, like a good meal. You're with others around you. And that's, I think, what has pushed me to this point.
I love that. I don't think I've ever heard writing be described as a good meal, but that honestly, that makes sense, right? You're speaking to another writer as well. It's that knack. And then it's like the light switch that goes on, you just like off to the races in a sense, right? Where now, fast forward to today, tell us a little bit about how that passion maybe has led you to what is now writing a book, your first book.
So, out of all of those years of writing, even early childhood journals, I would continue to, I would save those and I would look back on them over the years and I would see how that was progressing. It got heavier. Obviously, as we get older, we
Yeah.
bump into some heavier situations. And a lot of it did have to do with my biological father and the hurt tied to something that he did early on in my life. And that's really what the premise of this book is about, how despite what happened, it did bubble up later on. And luckily, I was able to create and compose something more than just journals. I was able to really gather a lot of who I was over those years and put that together. And I do think that even though the writing, a lot of it was just for me and for selfish reasons throughout the years. Of course, as I became a mother and my children started to talk and ask questions, I didn't have the answers many times. And I felt a calling as a mom to be able to answer some of those questions that, as difficult as they might be, I know how important sometimes an answer is, especially from a parent, and something that might be heavy. I think that we throw our parents off, we ask them these really heavy questions as we're going through things in life and we catch them off guard, and we have to remember that we're all human. We're all
Yeah.
caught off guard. So
Yeah.
in a way, it was a preparation for my kids to be able to get to know me on a deeper level, not just their mom that they see on a day-to-day life, because one day, of course, I won't be here.
Yeah.
And I want to leave them with something that is valuable and something that I know that they can also share with others. That's not just valuable for them. And it goes back to that good meal. We can all benefit from it. And I think that's just kind of what's led me to this point is realizing how much I want to continue to give my kids so that they in turn can reap from it, and they can also sow something else hopefully later on.
Wow, that's so beautifully said, because I think that oftentimes, I mean, you hit it on the nail, right? Like, it really is about intentionality, right? As we step into motherhood, as we are forming our new families, right? There's really almost like a triad of things that are taking place, right? Like, you have your past, you have you in the present, and then now you have the future in front of your arms. And trying to not keep them in a bubble, but at the same time, as they are growing, we are also growing as well. But I love what you are sharing. It is not so much of I'm gonna internalize, or this happened to me and we're just kind of gonna leave it there. No, I want to pass on a legacy. It sounds like you really stepped into healing. Motherhood gave you that courage to take writing not just from a place of this is fun and just kind of something I do for myself, but turning it something powerful that's going to impact generations to come, even with what you said, like whether I'm here or not, they have a blueprint, right? And how to live out a flourishing, healed life, which is beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that. Can you remind the audience, tell us the title of your book, what it's called?
The title of my book is In the Palm of His Hand.
Mm,
And I had envisioned a completely different title, if I can be honest. A lot of my book talks a lot of what you mentioned, healing, but that stems from triggers inwardly that I had to deal with and sort through as a wife, as a mom, as so many different hats that we wear. I didn't realize how much of what I was dealing with and healing from early on had been unresolved. And as I stepped into being a wife and motherhood, a lot of that really kind of came up in ways that I didn't imagine. And especially during COVID, I think for so many people, trying to navigate through that pandemic period was very triggering in many different ways.
yeah.
And as you mentioned, you want to protect your child from so many different things, but it became extreme for me. I realized that there was a huge imbalance in that, and it really set me off course, to be honest. It really threw me off mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I wasn't well.
Mm,
And I realized how important it was for me to be well because those hardships that I was experiencing, and they might not have seemed so hard to just any other person. I had my mom who's a nurse who was going to work every day dealing with people, with death and dying. That wasn't my struggle. My struggle was inwardly, but I
mm,
was here at home cooped up with two little kids, two under two at that time. And it became really, really, really difficult, almost torturous, to be honest, that I
mm,
couldn't function with joy
mm.
because I wasn't healed. And so I think that really created a path of trying to find healing wherever I could pull from because it started to affect not just my mind, but it really did pour out physically. It was all tied together for me.
Yeah.
And being able to, number one, ask for help, especially in hard times, I think is key, especially as Christians. I think that we want to take it all on and be empowered. And yes, God, his strength empowers us. But it's also okay to ask for help when you need help, when you feel so alone. And whether you're a stay at home mom, whether you're a working mom, all sorts of different walks of life, at some point we all need help and we all need connection. And that was really lacking at that point in my life. So just being able to come out of that a better person because I asked for help, I sought help, I continue to do therapy, as stigmatized as that can be in this day and age. And yes, I do think that we're more open to talking about mental health, but it's still challenging. You don't want people to view you in a negative light. But as I shared things that I was going through and how I was struggling with the pandemic, with mothering, with being a wife, with all the things that we think should come so easily, but it can get hard. And if we don't take care of those things, it layers on and it piles on. So stripping away that, quote unquote onion really allowed me to be more transparent with myself, with others, with my children, because they were growing up and they were watching me. They were my compass. I do
Yeah.
feel that if you're blessed enough to have kids, you know that they can interrupt the cycle of life.
Yeah.
And sometimes as a mom, that creates a little bit of it throws you off,
Yeah.
so you have a certain way that you're going to do your day, and all of a sudden your kid does something, and then you're like, well, we can't walk out the
I
door
guess
now.
we're not doing that anymore.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. And so having that disruption was recognizing that it came out as a positive. Really, it disrupted so many
That's good.
things, that the pandemic and everything during that time that I was experiencing created just an explosion. And
Mm.
trust me, it wasn't pretty, but there was a lot of those. And if I was brave enough, I think, to be able to come out stronger and share that I'm not all perfect, I'm not all healed. I'm still working on those things. I'm still working on forgiveness towards my father, forgiveness towards myself. As I'm still working through that, I want this book to not be so much of a self-help book, but more of it's okay to go through the journey and come together in that journey and realize
Yeah.
that we can be there for each other, even through our differences and even through those imbalances. We can be a stronger person, especially if we're connected, if we're asking for help, and if we're able to come out bringing somebody along and pulling somebody up as well, whether it be our kids or family members or whoever. It's a struggle and it does take work, but it does take a lot of courage to step into that path of wanting better and wanting to come out more whole and healed.
Yeah, and in the other side, now you are almost to say like a recipient living the fruit of your labor. I would love if you could talk a little bit about that because yes, stepping into a healing journey, it is messy, right? When you're in the thick of it, in the middle, being pulled at home and, just having the young kids and all of that, right? But what would you say now, like reflecting back to that version of Margo? This is a fruit that I'm living in because I did that work. Share with us what has been the the blooming that has taken place because you were courageous enough to do the work.
Absolutely. I'd love to take credit for all of that, but I think that I want to give credit to where it's due. And a strong force in my life was my mom. I'm
Mm,
going to try not to get emotional, but she was, and she still is, a woman of faith, a woman who taught me how to have courage in those hard times, that yes, hard times are coming and you have to prepare for those. It's almost like you have the umbrella and the raining boots and all the gear for that storm. And what good is it is if you're not using it? And so, but that's for, I think, each of us to figure out through the challenges that maybe we face in life, is how are we going to start to pull from those resources. And for me, that resource was God, was him always having me in the palm of his hand, even when my father stepped out of our lives and committed an awful crime, and he disappeared for nearly 20 years from my life. And knowing that at some point I was able to reconnect with my father, I realized that not everybody has those opportunities. I call it favor. I call it God's grace in my
mm,
life. And there were so many of those incidents, not just in the relationship with my dad, but in my marriage, in other relationships around me, that I couldn't help but feel so grateful to my mom for instilling that, but not necessarily just instilling it, because it's one thing to teach it to your kids, but living it out and seeing her faithfulness and seeing how much fruit out of her faithfulness in her life I was able to witness. Just that alone, I think for me, I wanted that. And I
mm.
realized that if she can go through hard times and be this strong, so can I. Because we are very different. My mom is, she is not an emotional person. I guess I wear my heart on my sleeve. I've mentioned that before. And so it's easy for me to choke up and cry. I watch a Disney movie and I'm crying. So I think that we're different in that sense, and that's okay. But I was able to pull from her strengths, and also I was able to understand in the moments where I think I would have liked to be able to be there for my mom, even if she was having a hard time. I know she didn't share that much growing up because she kept her composure, but I found the strength that God gave her in the hardest moments, and I saw how she just called on God, and that's what she led us to. And she was always pushing my brother and I to do the same. And that kind of instillment of not just teaching the word of God, but living it out and being a doer of the word for me was critical. And that really has been my driving force, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I love that your mom left you this roadmap, right? Like even like you're mentioning, fine, personality wise, we may be very different, right? Maybe some of it could probably be her professional training, right? Like working in a hospital as a nurse, right? Having to just kind of like go, 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 right? It's a very different type of a setting. But for there to be longevity and to have that example to pull from, that's so tremendous, right? And I think being able to pull from that in spite of encountering a tragedy, encountering such a setback or such a, family crisis in a sense, right? Something that really did mark you, which I'm telling you, everyone's got to get a copy of this book. It is definitely a page turner. It will not disappoint. And I love one thing, I wrote this down, what you said earlier. You said asking for help is key. If you can share with us, what were some of those things that you were just like, wow, this really made the difference?
I think there were so many different avenues I would pull from. My husband and I spoke with a couple pastors over the years and therapists as well. I also did that on my own individually. And something that I think is important to note is that finding a therapist that suits your need might take a little bit of work, but once you find that person that helps you, they're not doing the work for you, but they help you unlock something that's never really been unlocked. I think that's when you really know that this person is useful and they're the ones that I'm willing to invest in because of what they're allowing me to experience in a way that I haven't experienced before. And I
That
think that finding that person really, really helped me and helped our marriage as well, because now it's not just my husband and I, it's our kids. So
Yeah.
one thing that we've heard recently is how having that good marriage
Mm,
is an umbrella for your kids, and that is protecting your kids, and that's a safety for your family. And thinking of it like that, if we're helping ourselves, whichever way that may be, speaking to somebody, finding somebody, we listen to a lot of podcasts, we listen to a lot of people who can pour good things into our relationship. For me, I'm very big on Tim Fletcher. If you don't know who he is, I think that he is just an incredible person with a lot of experience. He talks a lot about complex trauma, and that's not something that I think society has heard a lot. I know we've heard a lot of trauma and PTSD, but complex trauma and everything that he mentions, it really does make so much sense when you're realizing that I don't want to put a label on anything, but I think it is important to help us label our feelings. And especially from a generation that comes from not being able to do that so easily. And now we're trying to reverse that.
yeah.
So a lot of reparenting and pulling tools that were helping myself and my husband as well to be better parents and reparent ourselves, not necessarily because our parents were doing things wrong, but there's something that we needed to create for ourselves that was going to create a new tradition,
Yeah.
and I think that that's really important. It's nice to do things that your parents did well and also incorporate that, but creating new traditions for yourself is really what just makes yours. And so
Yeah. Yeah, that's
even
good.
though what my father did affected so many people, it hurt us all, it was important for me to create something with that was going to be good. And even though it was hard and it affected me, and it took continues to take so many years of undoing, whether it be thoughts and tapping into, what am I really feeling? Why am I really upset? Am I upset with my husband because of this? Or is it because of the sense of abandonment in myself?
Mm,
Stemming from my father leaving us and things of that nature. I just think that there's so many now, we're flooded with things. You can find
mm.
help whichever way you look, but really incorporating that into your spirit, and utilizing whatever little tidbits that you're getting and exploring that deeper, because I think that we're just like fed so much stuff now in this day and age that it just goes in one ear and out the other, but letting
Yeah.
it resonate in your spirit, and maybe that's why I wanted it to resonate, and that's why I created this book, so that something would resonate a little deeper than just scrolling through it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I mean, wow, that's powerful. We in a sense, it's like God didn't design us to have all of that flooding taking place. He designed us to go down a path of healing, and you making that courageous decision of like, "Okay, I'm gonna say yes to this healing journey, as messy and as like, as uncomfortable as it is. Now I'm on the other side, and I can be light to others. And I know that this book has impacted me. I'm so thrilled that it is going to be ready to go, and many are going to get a chance to get their hands on it. Totally recommend it. I'll make sure to put all of the links below so that all of our listeners can get a chance to order a copy of their book and get connected with all things that Margo is up to. Thank you so much, Margo, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be able to speak on this.
All right. Thank you, everyone, tuning in. We'll talk soon.